Of course, each and every one of you are special to us tonight, and we are grateful for the attendance of each and every one of you. And it's always dangerous in a crowd this size to begin introducing guests, but I would be remiss if I did not introduce just a few special faces that I see out there. On behalf of Dr. Mark Keenum, President of Mississippi State University, and of course all of us on behalf of Dean Francis Coleman, who makes all these wonderful things happen at the library, let me welcome you to the university in addition to the library, and let me thank you for coming. We are extremely honored tonight to have a very distinguished guest in the presence of Derek Johnson, the President of the Mississippi State Conference of the NAACP. Derek, would you stand? Now, that's quite a distinction. I understand that Derek also has another distinction. He was a former work-study student for Miss Gale in his previous life, and I think you would agree, she put him on a good path, and he has served Mississippi very well. I also would like to recognize the distinguished chairman from the Mississippi House of Representatives from the metropolitan city of Plantersville, Mississippi, Chairman Steve Holly. And one thing that we can always count on here at the library is the very steadfast support of our mayor in Starkville, the Honorable Parker Wiseman. Mayor, in the back. And I know that I have skipped someone that I should be introducing, but I hope that you'll just indulge me and forgive me. To the Kinseys, I would say Mississippi, as you know from your experience here, is a very nuanced place. Representative Holland is also an undertaker, and he has, let me get this right now, he has one of the largest, if not the largest, funeral parlors in the state of Mississippi in Tupelo. And the reason that it is so large is that it once was the largest honky-tonk in Tupelo, Mississippi. And of course, my favorite moment all time through 56 years of living in the state, we had Jack Crystal's funeral at Representative Holland's mortuary, and I mean, it was fit for a king. But in the chapel, there was a beautiful piece of stained glass where the sun would come shining through, and because, as you might imagine, there aren't many Jewish funeral services in Tupelo, Mississippi, so Steve taped a Star of David over the stained glass, covering the cross so that it would be appropriate for the day. And I've seen a lot of things in all 82 counties of Mississippi, but I've never seen anything quite as reverent as an old Protestant boy get on a ladder and cover up the cross and replace it with a Star of David to honor a broadcaster that we all love. So it's an interesting place, you'll have to agree. Earlier this week, the Kinseys and of course our own Dean of Arts and Sciences, Greg Dunaway, they've done a lot of things. If you read the biography in your program, you'll see the Kinseys have had some marvelous experiences both here in the United States and abroad. They've met a lot of interesting and fascinating people. But Tuesday, they played a round of golf with the almighty, Morgan Freeman. Bernard Kinsey had not picked up a golf club in 20 years. Khalil had never picked up a golf club. And Greg had been engaged in a great deal of prayer and meditation, preparing for representing the university in that round of golf. So I think it was sort of a Vegas round of golf. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but we're, yeah. after the event, corner Khalil and ask him about the golf cart races. I think that was the high point of the day. Let me begin. We've got a lot of ground to cover. You do have formal biographies of the Kinseys, and they've been with us several times, and I'm not going to exhaust a great deal of time in going over those biographies because the people themselves are here and they're so interesting, and we want you to be able to take part in a meaningful conversation with them. Ladies and gentlemen, make welcome Bernard, Shirley, and Khalil Kinsey.
Thank you, Annie.
It's meaningful to me that our last formal visits with this family began very much in the way that my first exposure to the Kinsey family began when they visited the campus of Mississippi State, in a conversation, in an interview. We prepared some videos, and of course, Bernard and Shirley, Khalil, all sort of old pros at, as you can see from the video, at doing these interviews, and there are very few questions that they haven't been asked before in different and perhaps better ways, but they're very patient, and I hope that they will continue that patience tonight. We're talking about a large private collection of artifacts tracing black history spanning well over 400 years. It began as a husband and wife with a rather uncertain at first hobby. And 30 plus years later, it turned into a labor of love and a mission. The outcome, of course, is, as you can see, a rather staggering national touring exhibit that has gone all across the country in venues like the Smithsonian and Epcot Center at Disney World and other very distinguished venues. Of course, you see the artifacts, some of which we have here. Correspondence between Malcolm X and Alex Haley. And it leads to sort of natural questions about why. Why did this collection begin to consume this family? Why did they feel the need to share it? And why are people all over the country, famous people, icons like Whoopi Goldberg, Morgan Freeman, and others, drawn to interface with this family? Why is it so meaningful to almost everyone who comes in contact with it? And perhaps more importantly, what can we learn from this family? What can we learn as a society? What can we learn in the face of things happening in our country like Ferguson and Baltimore and our own history here in Mississippi? What can we learn from this family and this mission and this quest? We're going to have some fun with this conversation. We're going to ask some serious questions too. And I hope that at the end you will think about questions that you have and that you would like to put to these guests. And I assure you they're very patient and they're very anxious to have a dialogue with you. So let's begin. Bernard Kinsey grew up in Florida, following in family footsteps, attended Florida A&M University, and did the best day's work of his life. He met Shirley. After graduating there in 1967, he was the first African-American sales representative for Humble Oil Company, which was the forerunner of Exxon and then ExxonMobil. The job took the family to South Central Los Angeles, Bernard as a salesman, Shirley as an educator. And when I say South Central Los Angeles, I mean Compton, California. He immediately found success. rose to #1 with Humble Oil, then to Xerox. And the rest, as they say, is history. Vice president within 10 years. Between 1968 and 1984, this is an astounding statistic, had the distinction of achieving #1 status nationally in every sales and marketing position he held. How many of us wish we could say that once? And so that kind of success afforded him the ability to retire early, and he still had his health, he still had his wealth, and he had a lot of choices. We can see now from the vantage point of age the choices that he, along with his family, made. And so the first question I would put to you, Bernard, after fighting your way out of the South and achieving success and financial independence, what made you decide to do something other than sit back on the money and coast?
Well, first of all, Sid, thank you so much, and thank you, Dean Coleman and Stephen Canetta and the entire MSU family, and we really mean that. We've enjoyed this visit more than you can imagine. Shirley and I live our lives on two simple principles: to whom much is given, much is required, and a life of no regrets. And to be honest with you, the second one is harder than the first. A life of no regrets really means making the right decision the first time. So if you can make the right decision the first time, you never have to repeat those things that are really painful. And in terms of giving, God has blessed us immeasurably. And we've always said that we wanted to share. And the idea of being able to, I made a comment that if we had not done this route of museum shows, maybe 200 people would have seen what we now know as the Kinsey collection. So as we think about each of you, we have more than we need, and we got more than we earned, essentially. So the question is, what are we going to do to help someone else? And we have a little saying that everybody wants to play baseball, everybody wants to play catch, but some people don't want to throw the ball back because they got gloves on both hands. And the idea really is that you catch the ball and you throw it back. And in throwing it back, you give blessings to others, and blessings come back to you. And that's what happened with us. And I absolutely tell you, if you begin to share more, your world will change.
Thank you. To Shirley, leaving Florida as a young educator and going into the rough and tumble school system there in South Central, did you ever, in your wildest dreams, imagine that instead of being Shirley Kinsey, teacher, that you would be considered Shirley Kinsey, philanthropist?
Good question, Sid. Probably not in those terms, because I never, to me, back in those days, philanthropy would have meant somebody who had a lot of money, who gave a lot of money away. To me, philanthropy now means having the time, the energy, the passion, the whatever to share, the resources to share. I always tell people that we're all philanthropists in our own way. If you've got time to volunteer with kids, if you've got time to volunteer at church, if you've got time to give to seniors, you're a philanthropist. And that's what I've always felt myself to be. I grew up with my grandmother, who had very little. You failed to mention that we moved to California with $26 and a job and no car, and I didn't know how to drive, okay? So having gone through all of that, and when we left Florida, we wanted to leave the South behind, actually, because, you know, growing up through the civil rights period, you don't want to have anything else to do with that. Well, in doing what we do now, we found that we needed to go back home, though, to really understand who we were and who we are and who we wanted to become. And that's the philanthropist inside of me speaking. Okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
And then to Khalil. Khalil has been the enigma of this experience for those of us at Mississippi State. He is a young man who it is simply impossible not to like. So energetic, so happy, so infused with enthusiasm about what he's doing, and so anxious to help those around him. I got to admit, first meeting, I said, only child, prominent family, there's going to be a whole lot of labor required in getting Khalil situated. We can't keep up with it. He's a roll up your sleeves, get dirty kind of guy. He's the first guy to the work, last guy to leave it. But he did struggle with some issues as a young man trying to find himself. He told an Atlanta magazine, quote, "I didn't know any other black people that grew up like me. The only people I could identify with in that respect were white folks. I grew up being called rich boy and being ashamed of where I came from, ashamed of the success and affluence that his parents had achieved. Quote, I think I dumbed down myself in order to be accepted." And one night, that dumbing down of himself almost got him killed. He was with some friends, saw a dice game. They gathered the crowd around the dice game, and next thing he knew, let me read you the quote. "We stopped and joined them. Next thing we know, somebody hops over a fence and starts shooting at us. We jump into my friend's car. There were bullets going into the dashboard." And I think that sort of like Saul on the road to Damascus, I think Khalil had a moment. Khalil, tell us about the time that you realized that acceptance sometimes isn't the thing to which we aspire.
Thank you, Sid. You're too kind, first off. And hello to everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your evening with us. Yeah, my story is not unlike a lot of my friends growing up, or a lot of boys you guys probably know, and sons and some daughters, I'm sure. And but me growing up, I didn't know where I fit, and so I grew up. You know, the Cosby Show was, I think, universally kind of thought of as an anomaly. You know, that family, the image of a nuclear family, black family that was successful and had just a great life. That wasn't common. Now we all know that that couldn't be further from the truth. But growing up, we were called the Cosbys. And I ran from that for a long time because there weren't a lot of other families that, like that, especially in my neighborhood. So that coupled with, me being viewed as an outsider even in my neighborhood, and stopped by the police and harassed by the police and followed in the store, wherever I went, it starts reinforcing that maybe I don't belong here, or maybe this isn't for me. That coupled with, the messages that black men particularly get through the media and music and all over the place, the law, it starts wearing you down. And so for me, as a youngster, I thought that being black was something else. And so I chased that for a long time. And I can't say that there was a distinct moment that changed my life. I've lost a lot of great friends. I've probably lost, by college, I probably had been, and I still to this day, I've been to more funerals than anything else, than graduations, weddings, all of that. And at some point you say, you know what, this isn't the way it's supposed to be. And I only wish that my friends that aren't here had the opportunity to see that this wasn't the way it's supposed to be. But for me, my life changed completely when I embraced what you see here. When I started really opening my eyes to the information that is contained in this collection and so many other incredible stories of African-American contribution and achievement and just playing and participation in this country that you're not taught in schools. My world opened, and I said, you know what, the Cosbys is right, you know, and my family, why should I be ashamed of my family working hard and being successful? That's the way it's supposed to be. And why should I be ashamed of what I'm afforded because of that? And the reason I am the way I am is because I was taught that you work hard and you do reap the benefits of it, but you're responsible with that. And so I'm proud to be that person, but I'm that person because my parents have been responsible with what they've been blessed with. So.
Thank you, Khalil. There's one sentence from that story in the Atlanta magazine that I would like for you to expound on. You said, and I thought this was fairly profound, you told the interviewer that one thing you recalled fatherly advice that you got, quote, one thing that stuck out in my life, my dad, while he was at Xerox, saying, Xerox will never be Kinseys and Son, Khalil recalled. That told me all I needed to know. What does that mean?
Right. Well, and that's still one of my father's favorite, one of my favorite quotes of my father. And it's one of those ones that even when I wasn't listening to my dad about everything, I heard that loud and clear. And it told me, my father and mother really designed the life that they wanted to live, and they worked together to do it. And so for him being able to retire at 41 and say, you know what, I don't have to do this anymore, and I can design the life that I want to live. He told me, he said, you know, I plan on maybe working for 6 months and then taking 2 years off. And then doing, you know, and that was pretty remarkable. But me hearing that Xerox will never be Kinsey and Son taught me, well, for one, maybe it wasn't what you wanted exactly. It taught me that I didn't want to go the conventional corporate route. But two, it taught me that there's a lot of ways to live your life. And there's a lot of things that you can do out here that is fulfilling, and your determination of success doesn't have to be someone else's. It's what you determine for yourself and what's rewarding to you and how you want to live your life. So that's, yeah, I love that quote, and I kind of live my life by that quote, because what we're doing now is something that we all share in, and that I am carrying on, and this is Kinsey and Son.
Yes, it is. And again, I apologize, I'm an old reporter. Research is part of the gig. In 1991, you left Xerox for retirement. In 1992, you became the chief operating officer and co-chairman of Rebuild Los Angeles under Peter Uberoth. The mission of that organization was to bring jobs, economic opportunity, and pride to the area that had been devastated, decimated by the 1992 Los Angeles riots. Here's what Uberoth had to say about Bernard Kinsey. Quote, he's one of the successful people who wants to give back. He said of Kinsey, describing him as a manager with varied skills, Uberoth stressed that Kinsey had made, quote, a substantial sacrifice, both financial and in career, to join us. In that job, he succeeded in generating more than $380 million in investment for inner city Los Angeles. Okay, top of the heap, retire at 41. It took you less than a year to get bored enough to take on what most people said was an impossible task. Why that task?
Well, when Tom Bradley asked me to join Rebuild LA, it was like the job was made for me. It really was, because in 1967, when we moved to South Central Los Angeles, I got to know South Central like no one else. And people thought that this light-skinned brother didn't understand black folks in the neighborhood, which I did. So I was able to couple my understanding of South Los Angeles, this area that had been devastated. Let me put it in perspective. It was $2 billion, 2,078 buildings, and 63 miles worth of devastation in Los Angeles, 1992. That's what we took on. And the corporate world that I had just ascended from, along with that and the drive, I just thought it was a job that you just couldn't turn down, and I didn't. And I would do it in a nanosecond. And I'll just give you an example. We, Peter and I did actually work with him. We were co-chairs. Sometime I had to remind him of that, which I would do on occasion, any occasion.
Yes, you did.
But in an area of 2.3 million people, the size of Arkansas, there were less than 5 supermarkets. So we decided that we were going to change that. So I was reading the newspaper, true story, and Vaughn's supermarket had just reported that their same store sales in the suburbs had gone down. So I went to Peter and I said, you know what? We need to call Vaughn's and tell them that we have 67 miles worth of territory and 2.3 million people that don't have supermarkets. So Peter knew Roger Stanglin, the chairman and CEO. We set up a meeting, and I prepared a map. And I told him, I said, we will give you any corner in this 67 square mile area. Because during that period, we literally ran the city. If you wanted to get permits done, anything that you needed done, it came through us, Rebuild LA. And on the spot, he signed a deal for $100 million, on the spot. So then we went to Ralph's. We got them to do a 10-store deal. We went to Smart and Final, they did a 9-store deal, so forth and so on. And before you know it, we had 30-some supermarkets that had never been there. Then we went to all the oil companies and we said the same thing. In other words, this is a good instruction for you. See, life is what this accumulation thing and this integration. So you're all of these things, you're not one thing. And what I found particularly with Rebuild LA, that I could use all of the skill sets that I had been given all my life. And you know, this natural desire to be around people and not to have the big head, all that kind of stuff. So we just had a ball. And even today, it's one of the things I'm most proud of is what we did in changing the landscape and the demographics of South Los Angeles.
Okay. Shirley, a question. Your background in Florida, raised by your grandmother, valedictorian of your high school class, and of course the trip to California with $26, all of that. At what point did you realize that this guy may turn out to be something special?
Oh, boy. My grandmother used to always say, how does he treat his mother? And how does he treat his wife? Actually, right. How does he treat his sisters? And that's how you can expect to be treated. The one thing I always remembered about Bernard in college when we were dating and with his friends, whenever he said he was going to do something, he always did it. He was dependable. He followed through on things. He was smart. I forget sometimes just hearing you describe the Los Angeles scenario. I'd forgotten some of that stuff, really. Because when working with Xerox, you have all these measurements and stuff, and you can follow that. But working for a city or a county or whatever is just a little bit different. But seeing him be able to do all of that really, really impresses me still, honey. And the idea that when we left Florida, all of our friends were either going to Atlanta or to New York. And he decided to take this job in California, which is like, the other side of the world, literally. And to be able to do that was just a big deal. The summer before that, he had been a park ranger at the Grand Canyon. Who had ever been to the Grand Canyon? We didn't even know what that was. But he had been part of it. He actually had gotten the job and then impressed upon the guy who recruited him that he had to take his best friend with him so that he wouldn't be the only one there. Only black person there, that is. And all of those kinds of things at some point just always made me understand that, and I was pretty good. Mom used to always say, trust your insides, trust your gut, and understand how that felt. And so I knew I was on good ground. And he respected me. Respected my opinion, still does. Yeah. And he loved me, and I love him.
There's that.
Let me throw this grenade out among us. You mentioned growing up in the South in the Civil Rights era and the desire to escape that baggage and find a better life, and you found it. You made it. You got there. And you saw In the Heat of the Night and A Time to Kill, since we're in the Grisham Suite, and other depictions of a South that struggled to change and perhaps didn't change as much as it needed to. Honest answer, the three of you. Your expectations about coming to Mississippi, how did the expectation pan out against the reality that you found? And let's start with Khalil.
Sure. I think I was talking with somebody earlier this week that had a similar question, and to be honest, I was reluctant at first. But I'm also always I'm always optimistic. But I love people, you know. So the years that we've spent doing this together, we just know that we're gonna have a good experience, you know. But I didn't know what to expect. So the first trip was my father and I, and you know, I'm an LA boy, and so I come in. I don't know, it was after dark, and Raymond comes and picks me up, and we're driving, and at first Raymond is not talking much, and we're on these dark roads, and I'm saying, well, it's going pretty much as planned. But once we got here, and every day since, it's been a delight. It's just been a delight, and we look forward to being here. But everywhere we go, and we are keen on going and taking this collection to really whoever wants it, and in terms of who wants to share what we, you know, in the same spirit that we're sharing it. And it brings us to places that we've never been before, and we leave better for it, because we get to interact with so many wonderful people and get to see areas and experience areas that we probably wouldn't have on you know, any other occasion. And it makes us want to return, so you'll see us again. But it's been outstanding. But I was reluctant at first, for sure. I'm a Southern boy by default, and I lived in Florida for school and then afterward, and I've been you know, to a lot of the South, but Mississippi was another thing. So. Yeah.
Shirley?
Well, for me, I didn't come until the second time that they were here. And they came back home raving about this little short lady, Dean Coleman, who they felt could walk on water and make things happen, and that if by any chance there was anything that would make them feel uncomfortable, she would take care of that, and she did. And so I fell in love with the place really before even getting here. I actually was born in Lake City, Florida, which is a very small town, and about this size, really. And so I had mentioned the first night we were here, and we went to dinner, and I said, oh, I want to come back tomorrow. I want to go down to these little shops and stuff and all this. Oh, you're not going to find anything there. I said, it reminds me of Lake City. You know, I used to go visit my relatives there, and so I always wanted to do that. Still haven't had a chance to do all of that. But I like the feeling of the people, to be honest with you, black and white, and that has been really, really good. Growing up in well, not growing up, but yeah. I say we were raised in Florida, but our adult life has been in California, so we really kind of grew up there. And there's a lot of stuff that you find there that you don't find here.
True.
Okay? Not to the good, to the other. And so I just felt that anybody who came to see this had an open mind, an open heart, and wanted to experience what this was all about. And so once we were here and met everybody and got started, it was fine. And we were ready to come back and visit. I still have to get around a little bit.
Yeah, I think Shirley said it well. I have always wanted, with our exhibition, we've been in 18 cities, is to do things that are counterintuitive. So what we're trying to do is to try and help shape a different narrative about the African American story. And you really can't do that unless you do it in the South. I mean, you really got to do it in the South. And we were in Houston. We had a huge show in Houston. And that really kind of informed us Then Dr. Middleton had really, really been the catalyst in terms of, us coming. So when we came in December, we had a meeting in the Stennis room, I think it was. And it was interesting to be in the John Stennis room because I know John Stennis and I know what the Democratic South was, from the 40s all the way up in terms of segregation and so forth and so on. So it was really ironical. Here we are, the Kinsey collection and the John Stennis room. I mean, you got to get your head on that. So, but I'm sitting on one end and Dean Coleman's sitting at the other. And I knew that this was going to be a kind of tough installation because this whole back was full of John Grisham material because it's the John Grisham room. And we were trying to figure out, Khalil and I, how could we do a good show without that part of the room? And I think Dean Coleman must have recognized our dilemma. And she kind of looked at me and said, I don't remember how it was, but she really said to Glenn, what would it take to take all of John Grisham's material out of this room so the Kinseys will have the whole room? And I knew right then that she got it, okay? Because what she really was saying was, I'm willing to take on whatever because this is going to be about a 3-month show that we're going to do properly, and she has just been wonderful. And I should add that Stephen Canetta is the guy that translates everything that Dean Coleman, wishes and asks for in the reality. So what you're seeing here is, the Kinsey collection in the John Grisham room. And that's really something. When I tell people that way, they get it immediately. I say, let me tell you what. How many universities, how many libraries would take out a room, all of the material in a room named after somebody, and put your stuff in there? I said, that's what MSU did, and that's why we're there. Shut up. That's how you do it. Because it's not about these platitudes and all that. But we're really big on what do you do? What do you do? Not all these thoughts, but what do you do? And everything about our relationship here has been wonderful. And one of the things I said to Stephen, who's become a really dear friend, we don't disappoint. That's our motto. When we go to a city, we go to a city and we don't disappoint. In other words, if we tell you we're going to do something, we're going to flat out do it. And when we leave, the museum or the city is going to be better for the relationship with the Kinseys. That's our expectation, and that's what we strive for.
Thank you. We've got just a few minutes. We want to allow some time for the audience to ask questions of the Kinseys. Final question, and I'll offer this to each person on the panel. Building on the experiences here in Mississippi State and in Starkville, what's next for the collection? Khalil, where does the road show lead next?
This has been just a completely natural, organic thing that's just continues to unfold. So we're always kind of excited and a little bit, yes, well, sad to leave wherever we are because they're always great experiences. But we're always excited to see what's coming next, and sometimes we just don't know. But it's led us here, it's led us to the Smithsonian, it's led us to Epcot. Just some remarkable experiences. Next for us for this exhibit, we just signed a contract to go to Little Rock, Arkansas today. That will be April of 2016. So that's not a far drive. And the thing about the collection is we really try to give each venue a unique show. So you'll see probably some things that we weren't able to show here, or maybe some things that have been acquired, since our time here. So I encourage you to keep up with us and would love to see your faces in Arkansas. We're talking about an exhibit in Hong Kong, also for 2016, which we're having some serious talks about, and we're very close to doing. And then we're doing a lot in education. Yeah. So we're working right now my father and I have a big thing coming up in California with 50 or so, 58 of the superintendents from California, some of the largest school districts. And then we're talking to them about our curriculum. So we're very anxious to get that in schools and spread that around. And that's the most important thing, because as you know, if you're only taught a certain side of something and you're only given a certain view, and it's limited and it's just totally negative, or not totally negative, but it's largely negative or largely struggle or whatever, that's what people's going to identify with, and that's how people are going to view, that's how other people are going to view that people. And that's what we're dealing with in America. We've been taught one side, a very one-sided, a very limited story. And what we doing here, as you guys can all see, we're trying to share these other things to change the narrative that we all have and change the interaction that we all have and try to break down some of these barriers, because the whole point of this is to bring people together, and so to bring knowledge of each other to each other, and hopefully, change things.
Yeah. And let me just say this. We have the best time together. We go, just imagine this, for the last 7 years, we go into a city, like Starkville, and we have an opportunity to first of all, be together all the time. And we have an opportunity to meet the finest people like you all in every city, go to the best restaurants, the best institutions. It's just a good life. All I can say is you ought to try it, And because we don't have, and this is really important, not just for young people, because we made the proper decisions a long time ago, we can go home and never come out. And that's a good feeling. But because you can do it means you won't have to do it. You see what I mean? So this notion of choices is really, really big. And Khalil alluded to it. So the idea of being able to go to, we've never been to Little Rock. I had never been to Mississippi. I said, hell, why don't we do this? It makes sense. That's basically it. And 18 cities later, that's where we are. And Khalil used to say this was organic, and it really was, because we don't sit down and say, well, we ought to go to New York here. It's not that way. And if it was, we may not enjoy it as much. But we work very, very hard. I work harder now than I've ever worked in my life, and enjoy it more. Because you know what we're doing? We believe, they say, the question is, failure is a 4-lane highway, and success is under construction. So I believe that we are under construction, and in terms of trying to tell this story that, frankly, no one has tried to do it quite like this, with this kind of material. So it's a big responsibility in terms of what we are trying to do, and I'm in a hurry. I tell people all the time, I'm in a hurry.
Yes, he is.
I'm in a hurry. So I'm not interested in foolishness and taking a lot of time to get things done, because I don't know how much time I have. So I work every day about how do we get things done and how do we move this thing forward, because it's so important. And if we can do it, we will have something that not only our family will be proud of, but all of the millions of people that have seen it have said to us, they said, this is good stuff. So we really appreciate you all's support. And we get, check this out, we get letters and emails from so many places and so many people about how our work has affected them in a positive. That's also what is so met a young lady we met in Jackson, saw her son that had the cowboy boots in the elevator. We told him about the Kinseys collection. There she is right back there. He goes and tells her mom, and here she is tonight. And that's how it works. Because we're proud of this, we want to share with we're always caring. I'm always promoting Mississippi State. I'm telling people in California, man, get your butt on down there and check it out. Because it's something that you're going to learn from. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm just going to add one little thing. I always remind people that we didn't start out collecting for this to become a collection, to become an exhibit, to be shown all over the country like this. So when Khalil says it's happening organically, it truly, truly is. And same way we happen to be here. It was organic. You know, Middleton was there. I mean, we didn't search it out. And then came back, and here we are. And with the ladies from Arkansas, one lady had seen us in Charlotte.
Yeah.
And then knew that we were here, came over. Well, Tuesday night they were here. And here we go. And so while sometimes we're looking to rest in between, because it is truly just the three of us, the people will always go, well, who's your publicist? Who's your PR person? How are you guys getting in all these places? It's just happening. I mean, you saw the Disney, Epcot,
Yeah.
a black family. 5 years it's going to be
5
there.
years?
20 million people.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I'm not a religious person very much, but this truly is a matter of God ordering our steps. There's no other explanation for it. It's just the way things continue to move forward for us. It's much bigger than us,
Yeah.
and I tell people all the time, this is an important exhibit, not because it says Kinsey on
I
it.
agree.
It's because it's about all of us. And that's what we're trying to get people to see, that this is American history, not just one side of things, but this is a part of a larger story that needs to be told.
Exactly.
And let me just say that. Go ahead.
What I get excited about is Black History Month, February, 28 days. You talk about the same 3 or 4 people every year, but you get to see this throughout the year, and you find out that there are a lot more people, a lot more reports that could be written about other folks. When Khalil was in elementary school, I used to always tell him, okay, you're gonna have to, and we could hardly find books at the time, but you're gonna have your reports be about black people, and he would want to know why, and it's because you need to know, and you need to let other people know. And this is kind of a continuation of that, actually, and it's just wonderful to be able to be received this way, and to have people, I want to open hearts and minds and spirits to being able to receive what is offered, and to have it make a difference in the lives of many people. And our young people coming up now need to know, whoever they are, they need to know their history, and they need to be able to accept and understand other folks' history. And I think that's how we can solve a lot of issues that we're experiencing now.
Before we open it up to questions from the audience, I want to remind you that at the end of this session, which we're going to hold to 15, 20 minutes, we'll invite you to join us for a reception. There will be books available out there. Our cameras eavesdropped on a conversation between Morgan Freeman and the Kinsey family, and the theme of that conversation was, as Shirley said, the incongruity of having simply Black History Month rather than what Bernard Kinsey speaks of as an incomplete history. And integration is a poor word, but the assimilation of all of our history into a common history for all of us in America. That book fills in a lot of gaps in the ways that conversation and lectures and things of this nature can't. So if you haven't had a chance to see that book and take that knowledge home with you, I encourage you to do so. Be out in the lobby there. So let's open it up.
We'll sign it.
Got my pens.
I want to share one thing with you. One reason you and Dean Coleman have hit it off so well is you share a common philosophy. Be reasonable. See it my way. And just between us, she can walk on water. She's standing on the bodies of those with whom she's disagreed.
Love it.
So be careful. All right, audience, this is your time. If you have a question for the Kinseys, yes, sir, please.
I have 2 questions. I'll direct my first to Khalil. Since you're the younger member of the group of other families, and I think you would probably agree, most of us would agree that our younger people don't seem to be interested or well informed on Black history and the struggles our Black people ancestors went through to reach the point where we are in time now. So my question to you is, what can we do? What do you think we can do to motivate our younger people to get more interested in Black history?
For those who couldn't hear this gentleman, what's your name?
Fred Edwards.
How are you, Mr. Edwards? The question is how to get the younger generation more engaged in their history. I wasn't engaged in my history, and I grew up with my history. I always say it was a blur on the walls and as I was trying to get out of the door. It's very difficult, and I'm sure it's even more difficult now. The pull of the streets and the negative imagery and messages is hard to combat. But I'll tell you this, there is a disconnect in terms of between generations, especially in the black community. And I have a theory on that, and I don't know, how true it is, but my theory is that those that participated and came up during the civil rights struggle, it was so taxing that they didn't want to talk about it anymore. And it became a guilt trip. I've never done well with guilt trips, and I know most kids don't do well with guilt trips. So if you start, when you're talking to kids and you're saying that such and such died for you, so you do this, how come you can't do this, and how come, that's not gonna work. You have to share with them how rich and powerful this is, but you have to do it in a way that they can see themselves in the picture. For me, that's what changed everything for me. The more that I learned about all of this, the more I could see myself in the picture, the more I could see, the more the questions were raised in my own head about, for one was, why wasn't I taught this outside of my home? Why aren't we as Americans taught this? We're being done a disservice, because it's not allowing us to interact in a better way. And as black people, it's not allowing us to see ourselves in a better light. But overall, it was that I could see the connection. There was context. I could see what led, what in the past led to the next thing, led to this, led to where I am now. You know what I mean? And once I figured that stuff out, it just started making way more sense to me, and it gave me a lot more clarity and allowed me to see the world and America in a different way and kind of figure out how to navigate it and be a lot more comfortable and confident in navigating it. So I think that that's a huge component, is that we have to find the language. It's just truth. We have to talk, we got to be transparent, we have to be honest, and we have to do it without bias and finger pointing and guilt. That's just my take on it.
Yes, comment before I close. I said, Mr. Brown, you have a good collection here. Is there one piece that really, the mother of all pieces that really makes you have goosebumps?
Yeah, there are a lot of them, frankly. All of these are our babies. The Francis letter from 1854 is powerful. Francis Crawford, that letter just, first time I saw it 15 years ago, it was really, really, really powerful. The slave document from young brother, 18 years old, being sold for $550. That was the first document I got, and frankly, it changed my life, because when my friend in Florida sent it to me, when I opened it, it was a FedEx, and I opened it, I couldn't believe I was holding this brother in my hands. I just couldn't believe it. And then the next thing, how could someone do this to another person? Then the next question, how did we get in this predicament? So let's play it out. So if you take those three questions and you iterate them, it started me reading. And reading about how did black folks get into this predicament in America. And it's a complicated, complicated story. And the more I read, the more I wanted to read, and the more I began to see that there was a clear, linear kind of progression to this story. And when I learned about John Punch in 1640 being the first African that was racially profiled in this country in 1640. So everybody in here say John Punch. John Punch. Say it again. John Punch. So John Punch was the first guy, African American, that was racially profiled in this country. So if you get John Punch in 1640 and you go to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence, and all of those documents are talking about equality and striving for freedom. And then you say, there's the conflict in this country. The conflict in terms of being racially profiled from 1644 and this ideal of equality. And what Khalil talks about, the navigation of that, is why it's so difficult for our young people to get out of school or to get into college or to stay out of jail. Because those two forces are working all the time. And if you buy into the Declaration of Independence, Bill of Rights, and the Constitution, you will not get through it. So you have to have both. You have to understand this country has a pernicious desire to continue to hold black people in a place that they shouldn't be. But on the other hand, there's another desire to allow that to happen, those that can navigate it. So the question that we have is, how do we help our young people, and not so young, navigate a system that is designed to be in conflict with the very ideals of this country? And that's why we believe that only through knowing your history, there's a saying we use, they're the stories that made America, and they're the stories that America made up. So when you sit on that a little while, it says almost everything that you want to know about this country. So to be, and even the PhD, a young man here working on a PhD, he won't know all of this stuff because it's not taught. And it's not taught because of a simple concept of the myth of absence. The myth of absence is being invisibly present. And that's what black folks are in this country. There's 35% black population in Starkville, and you go in most of Starkville that we've been in, and you don't see black folks. That's the myth of absence, okay? So unless we can really be able to take from this notion of racial profiling to the Constitution, Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence, you're never going to be able to get out. Did I answer your question? Did I answer it for all of you? Okay.
And so much more, right?
Okay, well, but there's a concept called learn, use, teach, okay? And that's what this is about. Because when you learn something new, you can then put it in your heart and you can start changing. Because that's the problem we got. I would suggest that you get the book not because of us or MSU, because you need it. You need it for yourself. Why? Because every page is probably 3 or 4 history books that you're not going to read. And in every page it says about, I'll tell you, there's a brother named Ignatius Sancho right over here, 1782. I know they're trying to stop me. Let me just give it to him right quick. 1782. He was born on a slave ship. Can you imagine being born on a slave ship? Guess what he goes on to become? An opera singer, an entrepreneur, the first brother to vote in an election in England. It's possible. It's possible. And that's what our young people need to know, that it's possible. That a Henry Flipper can go to West Point in 1877 and graduate and nobody speak to him for 4 years. But he graduates. And you're telling me you can't graduate from high school? So some of that is what we have to do. We have to go back and then bring it here and then put them in a position where they have to deal with their reality. And the reality is that they either get into it in terms of education or they are destined for have a life that they're not going to like. Okay? I'm sorry, they keep trying to.
Well, no, just we want to allow it.
Preach on, brother.
Okay.
Preach on.
Okay.
On behalf of Tyrone Ellis, my colleague in the legislature that's joined us at this lecture, I certainly want to welcome y'all on behalf of all
Thank you.
Mississippians to our state.
Thank you.
You've already enriched us greatly. We thank you for that. Now, Tyrone's been in the legislature 36 years. I've been in 32, so we've seen a lot of modern history along with Sid Salt, who's written a lot of very nasty articles about us. And we love him because he's made a difference. Thank you for saying art belongs in public education. I don't believe anything more strongly than that. What do we do with public education, any of you, especially senior, I think, because you've been in the corporate world, which is something I don't understand yet. And I've been a pretty good entrepreneur myself. But what do we do in public education? Do we spend more money? Are we teaching the right thing? What can we do, especially in Mississippi, because we want all of our people to succeed. And we're a little bit under the 8 ball because of a lot of reasons, culture, history, all kinds of things.
Well,
does money do it?
Well, money is just a part of it.
Okay.
It can be a big part of it. In some states, money is you know, that they're spending a ton of money and you're still not getting the results. Here's what I think we have to have. Until white people and black people believe that all people need to get the same education, it's not going to change. You follow me? So the notion in, let me give you a statistic. In Mississippi, only less than 5% of the kids black in this state can read at 8th grade education, right? Proficiency. White kids only read at a 21 to 25% rate in this state, which means 75% of whites are not reading at an 8th grade education level and 95% of blacks. Now, so if you do the math, you got to say that this state is failing all of its students, all of its students. And so that's why I say it's got to be both black and white. So this just ain't a black problem. You know, this is a Mississippi problem. And if Mississippi has to adopt, and one of the things we got to do is, and I said this the other night, we got to stop fighting this war. The war is over. We won the war. You follow me? The Confederacy lost the war. And as long as you keep trying to have tradition be this guise to keep this thing like it was, we're never going to change. Because the way it was that black people never got their 40 acres in a mule, but white people didn't either. And I'll tell you why. Because in 1984, I gave Jackson State $1 million grant from Xerox for their computer program. And the mayor of Jackson was there, Jackson, Mississippi, and he said, why y'all giving them that? I said, because I can do it, first of all. You understand? Just so you know. So secondly, I said, you know, in the press conference, I said, you know what? As long as Mississippians are holding black people in the ditch, they're going to be in the ditch too. And I can't say that any better than that. And if you look at all the red states that have made it part of their glory to get in the ditch with black folks, it's just not going to work. So I'm all about how do we make Mississippi a better place? And we cannot make that a better place unless we decide that everybody is going to get an education, and a good education, and then access to jobs. And then access to jobs. You know, so, you know, when I look at the red states, you know, Obamacare, people say they don't want Obamacare in the red states. Well, let me tell you what's going to happen in 10 years. There are going to be healthy states, which are all blue, and there are going to be unhealthy states, which are all red. You follow me? It's going to happen because no one's getting insurance in the red states. And it just seems to me that we have to think, and I'm getting this stopped, but I hope I'm having some balance on this to the point that we have to talk about this and having legislators that have been in there. We need voices like yourself that instead of going along with the status quo in Mississippi, that we got to say, you know what, it's wrong. We can't lock up every black kid that we find just so a few entrepreneurs can have more prisons so they can make more money. I mean, come on. But we have to have independent thinking that is going to challenge this system in a way that is going to start saying that I am not going to be part of the status quo that says that we're going to continue to fight a low-level, low-grade war dating back to 1865. I think that's one of the biggest issues we got in the South. And I'm glad you asked the question.
Just to touch on what you first spoke of about art in public schools, I think that's a huge component as well. I spoke when we had dinner with the Humanities Council the other night, and art programs and the arts as a whole are the first to go from schools and after-school programs and everything like that. And I think that's a huge component as well because it provides a balance. And for me, if I were growing up in a school system that was only standardized test based, and it was only about certain results, but I wasn't my creative, you know, I'm left brain, and if that wasn't given to me, then I don't know what I would do. You know what I mean? And I think that we have to address that all students aren't the same, and we have to be able to provide them with things that are going to stimulate them in a myriad of ways. So I agree with you.
And let me just say one last thing. No, I mean, seriously. It may not be the last thing, but I'll say that. And we have to be okay about disagreeing without being disagreeable, okay? Because we can have different points of view. And the beauty of this country is different points of view is what made this melting pot work. It can't always be the salad is over here with just certain things and the soup is over here. We have to figure out how we can integrate this thing in terms of meshing it together. But if we don't listen to each other, or we are so afraid of our positions being, stigmatizing us, that in fact, we're never going to change this. But I really appreciate your leadership in terms of your question you asked. Thank you. Okay.
Steve, Tyrone Ellis, what he said. See what he said. I want to recognize Representative Ellis. He joined us a little late, but we are so thrilled to have him here. He's represented this area with grace and distinction for a long time, and it is good to see you.
Let me clarify something. Bernard, Chairman Steve Holland, there's nothing status quo about him.
Good.
Status quo. He is the conscience of the state legislature when it comes to reason. And we're so proud of him, and he will speak up when no one else will. And that's why he got up and started breaking your brain this evening. But let me also commend you all, the family as a whole, for all of the fine works that you all are doing and for coming to Mississippi State University, because we really needed this. And of course, working with Dean Coleman, that's just a treat, that's just a bonus that you have. And but now, Khalil, I want to challenge you because you mentioned something about curriculum. And I want to ask you, how do you foresee segueing into the school systems throughout our country in terms of bringing this collection or this historical perspective into our school system?
Sure. In 2009, we had an exhibit in Tallahassee, Florida, where we all went to school. So that was a treat. But we were approached by the Florida Department of Education, who had a mandate that African American history was to be taught throughout the year, and they were in a rush to figure that out. And so it was an opportune time that we were there because we were right there in their face. So we were able to develop a curriculum with them that was implemented across the state, 3.2 million kids K through 12. Since then, things have changed in terms of the national core standards and a more universal way of teaching. And so we have been in a rush to update the curriculum that was developed in Florida to meet the national core standards in the hopes of first starting with the top 10 U.S. markets and starting to get that curriculum in schools. And then we are also working on an e-book, which we're very close to finishing, that will is for iPads and tablets, because it is well, we know that technology is where the world continues to go and continues to develop, and we want to be in that space. I think it's going to be a great equalizer, because you can't say, a school district can't say that they can't put this material in because they have to wait till new books are printed. It's just going to be a few codes on the keyboard to update it. So that's going to be, I think that's going to cut out a lot of stuff, because you're going to say, well, why can't you put this stuff in through technology? So we're working on that very, very soon, and this conference that we have with the superintendents in California, we are very excited about, because they are excited about us being there, and they want to work with us in terms of implementing the curriculum in California. And California is one of the largest. Just has some of the most school districts, period. And period, and it's our backyard. So us being able to start there is a good start.
But
I hope that
let me
answers.
say this about Mississippi. We had conversation just this afternoon. Derek Johnson is here. We've been talking about this. We believe that what we have developed, not just the curriculum, but this whole lecture series, the exhibition, and the book all together, is a powerful, tangible source for teaching tools. And we've seen it. We've had almost 1 million kids see the Kinsey collection. I mean, come on, you tell me somebody else has had that. So this is like slow pitch from our standpoint. So what we're saying, we think we can go into literally almost any school district and begin to supplement and help the superintendent and principals and teachers change. Because a lot of them don't believe that these kids are worthy. Let's stay with that first. And if you don't believe that the kids are worthy for education, how in the heck are you going to teach them? And kids are smart enough to know that you don't care. So they shut down and you rush them out. So we understand, we had 198 teachers in Palm Beach that went through the program. And we got the analytics. We had 9 districts, counties in Florida that went through. We had 4,000 teachers in Pennsylvania, DC, Maryland, and Virginia go through it. We know it works. So the question really is, you know, when the pupil's ready, the teacher will appear. You follow me? And we got the goods, and we're saying we're not here to try to take it home with us. We want to try and use this in as many places as we can do it. And now being in Mississippi would be a good place to start. Okay?
Let me, I know that we could continue this conversation for a long time and how encouraging that is this evening, but we agreed early to try to wrap this up about 8:30 so that you could actually have some time out at the reception to visit with the Kinseys and have a little personal conversation. I want to say this. This experience has been very good for Mississippi State University. Those of you who are home folks know this. Mississippi's history is what it is. It is what it is. Mississippi State's history also is what it is. We are the most diverse university in the state of Mississippi among the 4 major universities. We are the most diverse land grant institution of the original land grants in the country, with the most diverse school in the Southeastern Conference. I have a friend sitting back there with his daughter in his lap named Derek Johnson, whose job it is every day to stand up and say, we're not there yet. And we say at Mississippi State University, he's right, we're not there yet. But Mississippi State has a better narrative than most of the major universities in Mississippi, in the South, in the country on how we did it. We did it in 1963 with a basketball team that was willing to defy the mores and political concepts of the day, to sneak out and play a basketball game in East Lansing. In 1965, we had peaceful integration here. Was it an embrace of Richard Holmes? No. He was ignored and left alone and marginalized, but we sort of congratulated ourselves and said, at least we didn't have riots here. So that's the balance. This experience, let me repeat, this experience having the Kinsey collection here and having the crowds that came to see it, and not just the numbers, but the quality of people who came to see it, it's been a tremendous benefit for Mississippi State, and it will be a gift that keeps on giving. Thank you so much for bringing this here, for your presence, and for those of us who've been lucky enough to have time with this family. Let me thank you on behalf of this library for your friendship.
Thank you, Sid. Appreciate it.
One more thing, we've picked on Dean Coleman tonight. Without this lady, none of this happens. Please give her a round of applause. Please join us at the reception out in the lobby.
If I might, one last thing. The Templetons, please stand up. Can we all wish them a happy 38th anniversary?
And I am totally sorry. I neglected the most important remarks of the evening, and that'll be from Pat, who we don't hear much of, so I'm dying to hear what she's got to say.
Well, I want to take this opportunity to certainly thank Sid and the Kinsey family for this most powerful evening with them. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And I want to encourage everyone to please fill out the survey that was in the seat. This is from the Mississippi Humanities Council, and it helps us when we have your feedback in order to bring programs like this to you. I also wanted to take an opportunity to share with you the beautiful Kinsey collection book that Sid has mentioned is out in the audience, out in the lobby beyond the glass doors, and I think you agreed that you would be happy to sign this if anyone would like to purchase it. And now please join us for the reception.
Thank you. Thank you, baby. All right.
That was